Hey there, Garrett here. Yet again, I've come across a deal I can't refuse. So I'm going to take my brew setup from inside my barn, under my lean-to, with a very new to me 3-tier brewing stand. Imagine my surprise when I saw this on Marketplace at $400, then $300, then $200. I wrote to the guy to see if he'd only sell the rack, but he said he'd only sell it as a package, which is fine, so I bought it and pieced everything out. Sold everything, including this keezer, the 4 kegs, the CO2 tank, and the regulator. So now I'm good to go and mess around with the rack and make it my own. So you might be thinking, Garrett, what's your preoccupation with racks? Whether you recognize it or not, every time you set up a brew day without the use of pumps and when you rely on gravity, you're kind of setting up a rack situation. Here I'm using chairs to get vertical height, but I've also used the bar. And every step you go down, you need to rely on gravity for the transfer of water into the mash tun into the boil kettle, and then finally boil kettle into your fermenter. What a rack does, a rack allows you to do this in a stationary fashion and also store your stuff there. For years, I've been obsessed with design and the utilization of racks in my small apartment in Korea. And here you can see that I'm in a broom closet, or laundry closet. It's probably 4 feet wide and maybe, if we're being generous, 6 feet long. And I'm able to brew not 5 but 10 gallons of beer vertically, where the mash tun is on top, and then a lauter into the brew kettle below it, and then directly below that I would siphon into my fermenters. Lest there be confusion, I'm not interested in a single tier horizontal rack. Those require pumps, so they're no interest to me. Let's take a look at the 3-tier I just picked up and how I'm going to modify it to suit my needs. All right, here's the rack under my lean-to, and we're going to kind of work backwards. We're going to start low and then go up to high. So on the right-hand side here is going to be where the boil kettle is. You can see it's on the rack, and the boiler's on the rack. And with the pot on top, working with gravity, I have to go backwards. So I always have to be stepping up. If you were to use a kegel here, your kegel, 15 gallons, is going to be really tall, which is going to make your mash tun in a taller position, which would make your hot liquor tank in an even taller position. So that is something to consider. For me, my boil kettle's here, and I've got my old behemoth of a mash tun here. I'll end up building an extender on the shelf to keep it upright, but you can still see with my boil kettle down here, I've got plenty of vertical clearance for gravity to take hold. However, if I did have that kegel there, I'd probably be 3 or 4 inches taller, and that wouldn't work, so that would be a problem. What I can do to gain some vertical space, and I might do this, is I can just drop this down onto the ground, give myself an extra 2 or 3 inches if I needed to. In the case that you were using a mash tun that was the circular ones, every inch counts. But I'm going to ditch this for a couple reasons. It's way too big for even my full volume mashes for the 10 gallons. It's way too big with grain and water. And for my overnight mashes, I lose a decent amount of heat. So I'm swapping that out with something quite a bit smaller. So that old behemoth was maybe 100 to 120 quarts. This one's about 60, so it gives me the same vertical clearance. Again, with that extender shelf here, I got no problem there. But most importantly, if I want to use a hot liquor tank up here, like this kegel I got, this will drain into it no problem. So again, it's all about the 3 tiers, 1, 2, 3, or 3, 2, 1, depending on how you look at it. Starting up high and then going down low each time so you don't need a pump. Something to consider at the end of the day, would you rather be lifting cold water? So in this case, I'm going to be lifting cold water into the kegel here. Or after you finish your boil, if you've got hot wort here, how do you siphon it into either your carboys or your kegs for keg fermentation? In my case, I'm comfortable lifting these 10 gallons up onto a chair to initiate a siphon that way. But you could, even thinking outside the box, if you want to get really nerdy about it, you could go to a 4-tier system where this is higher than the top of your keg, which would allow for you to siphon the finished boiled wort into the keg. So you would be 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you just have to determine if you don't have a water source plumbed in to fill your hot liquor tank there, do you want to lift the cool water into your hot liquor tank, or are you comfortable lifting hot wort onto a position that you can siphon into later. Here's a pro tip, not applicable in my situation, but if you're lucky enough to have water plumbed in near your hot liquor tank where you can draw directly, some people will whittle up a little stick, graduated measuring device, and instead of having to measure it volumetrically in, you just fill to a point, eyeball it, and once you've had enough, just call it good. So always keep the stick near your HLT and you'll be good to go. If you plan on having 2 boilers, so in my case the hot liquor tank and then the boil kettle there, I recommend getting a Y adapter with shutoff valves here. Super easy to control and also space saving because you only need to rely on a single propane tank instead of 2.